So today we are making one of the world's best appetizers, pigs in a blanket, but we are gonna make my paleo rendition in my book, The Comfortable Kitchen. Y'all, this recipe is near and dear to my heart because it took me about 45 times to perfect. And like, who doesn't love a pig in a blanket? They're the cutest little bites. Whether you're hosting for game day or having people over for Christmas Eve, this is the appetizer that everyone's gonna love. Adults, kids, what's not to love about a pig in a blanket? So I'm gonna show you how to make my version today. All right, so the tricky part that took me like 45 times to perfect, like I said, is the dough. And just trust me, there's like a couple weird things that we're gonna do, but again, I've tested this a lot, so just trust. So we're gonna start off with an egg. Doesn't matter if it's a room temperature or not. We're gonna do 2 tablespoons of avocado oil. And then we're gonna do a teaspoon of honey. It just adds a little sweetness to the dough. I'm gonna do it in this one with the oil so it slides right out. It's about a teaspoon. We're gonna whisk this up. Let's well combine, and then we're gonna add in our dry ingredients. The ingredient list is very simple, but it's also very specific. Okay, so for our dry ingredients, we have almond flour and tapioca flour. That's gonna make the perfect combination for these little guys. We're gonna do 2/3 a cup of almond flour to start. We're gonna bring the almond flour back in just a second, but again, this is where things get kind of weird. And then we have 1/3 cup of the tapioca flour. I find the combination of almond flour and tapioca to be the most similar to an all-purpose flour. We're also gonna add a little bit of salt and a little bit of baking powder. Just 1/4 teaspoon. And then using a rubber spatula, we're just gonna stir this until it's well combined. Okay, so you're gonna have a ball of dough, but it's gonna be wet and sticky. So now we're gonna start adding a couple more things to this, and this is where it gets very specific, but if you add them all in at the same time, I don't know why, it's fussy. It just doesn't work the same. So do it like I do, even though it's all the same ingredients. We are going to add a remaining tablespoon of the almond flour and the tapioca. Again, just trust me, I've made this a bajillion times. If you only knew how dedicated I was to the cause of making a paleo pig in a blanket. It's one of my childhood favorites, and I just knew it had to happen. Once it gets to the point where you can use your hands, you can start working that flour into the dough. And this is, I've heard, most people have success with this recipe, but this one is a little fussy. So I'm gonna show you how to troubleshoot. Okay, so right now we have our doughs in there, and the last thing, which the recipe calls for, is 1 more sneaky tablespoon of tapioca. Again, just trust me, it works. And you're just gonna work that into it, and that's gonna absorb nicely where it's not too wet. It should still be, because it's a paleo baked good, slightly stickier than like, a crescent roll, because when you start to bake almond flour and other grain-free flours, they tend to dry out more easily. So you want it to be a little bit wetter than like a crescent roll. This is looking and feeling good, but if you're feeling it and you're having a hard time rolling it out, which is what we're gonna do next, then just add another tablespoon of tapioca flour. Don't do any more almond flour, because then it could potentially get too dry and grainy. The tapioca flour is not gonna do that, but it is gonna help bind the dough and not dry out anymore. So just maybe 1 more extra tablespoon of tapioca flour is all you need, depending on like how big your egg was or whatever, to troubleshoot. So this should work just fine. We have our dough ball. It feels great to me. Like I could sleep on it. But now we're gonna roll it out. And I'm not gonna roll this out like I would like a normal piece of dough, just because it's paleo and paleo likes to be fussy. So I'm gonna show you what I do to make sure that it doesn't get all sticky on my counter. 2 sheets of parchment paper. We're gonna sandwich our beautiful little ball of dough. And we're gonna take a rolling pin. Sometimes you have to kind of like hold this down and just spread it out. You're gonna want it to be like a rectangular. I can't remember what the size and shape is, but I'll show you. Okay, we've rolled it out. And what I say in the book is 9 by 12 rectangle, about an eighth of an inch thick. And that's what we have here, more or less. And now it's time to roll our little piggies into a blanket. We have some cocktail sausages here, little smokies, classic. And we're gonna drain them off because they come in that like weird fluid that nobody likes. Okay, so technically, Hillshow Farms is not paleo, but there's a Teton Farms brand that I use that is no sugar added. Okay, so now, where am I? We're gonna get a paring knife and we're gonna start making our little crescent rolls. Basically, you're gonna wanna form like these little triangles that you're gonna roll the weenies in. I'm gonna start with this middle one, feels right. Put your weenie and roll it up in the blankie. I mean, nailed it. The dough's perfect. Trust me, make it. If you need to, add a little bit more tapioca flour if you're having a hard time. We've got a parchment lined sheet pan and we're gonna start placing on here until we're all done. And the more you do this recipe, the better you get at tucking your little piggies into bed. Sometimes the ends aren't that cute, and that's okay, but we're like not gonna not eat them, you know? So we're gonna wrap these little ugly pigs. And you know what? We'll put lipstick on these pigs and dip them in ketchup. That's the trick. So this is my favorite thing about this recipe. I will take this sheet pan, I'll put it directly in the freezer, I'll freeze them, and then once they're completely frozen, I can throw them in a Ziploc bag or like in a jar and keep them in my freezer. So that way you have pigs in a blanket on demand whenever you need them. So if you're hosting a party and you're prepping ahead of time, you can make these like a month ahead of time, 3 weeks ahead of time, 2 days ahead of time, whatever your heart desires. But I also love leaving these in the freezer too for like an after school snack, a little breakfast treat, a little pig in a blanket, just life. Just keep them in the freezer. All right. Today I'm gonna bake them because that's what we're doing. So they go in the oven at 350 for, how many minutes do I bake them for? 8 to 12 minutes. Okay. Piggies in a blankie. They're nice and warm and cozy. They're all baked and they're so cute. Okay, let me get a spatula. Let them cool for a minute or you will definitely burn your tongue. Let's put them on a little plate. And pigs in a blanket can absolutely not be served without a dipping sauce. My personal preference is a really good, like grainy Dijon mustard. This brand, if you see it, buy it, serve it with your pigs. This makes them more elegant. Or you can be a classic American, which they ain't nothing wrong with that, and just get the all ketchup out. But the mustard with pig in a blanket, there is nothing better in my mind. Okay, and there we have our beauty little blankies. Look at this. So cute, golden. I'm going in for the gold. Hopefully it's not too hot. Delightful. And you can see my 40-time recipe testing of this recipe. Whatever I'm trying to say. It worked. I did it for us. Be the superhero of your next party. Make these pigs in a blanket, keep them in the freezer, bring them out when people come over, and people are gonna love you for it. And you're gonna love yourself because who doesn't love pigs in a blanket? And for this recipe and more like it, you can find it on page 12 of the book, The Comfortable Kitchen, my book, The Comfortable Kitchen. And you can find more recipes like this on my blog, thedefineddish.com. This little piggy goes to mama. Is this like a challenge? Like how many do you actually think you could eat? I could eat all of them, but realistically at a party, I could go 10. Easy. Crush them. In fact, I'll do it now.
Time starts now.
Timey.